All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another live stream, continuing along on our series in generative AI. Today we're going to cover a really interesting topic, and it's going to really marry together a lot of the things that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. So just to give a quick recap of a couple things that we've covered the past few weeks. So we've covered how to interact directly with the OpenAI API. Last week, I think it was last week, we covered how to do some basic prompt engineering. And I want to say that I did a third live stream, but I can't remember what that was now. But anyway, so I want to cover LangChain today because it's really going to take what we've been learning with generative AI in the last couple of streams and putting it all together for this really nice cohesive kind of package that we're going to be working with. So, it's perhaps just best to jump in and show you like a demo before we even get going. And if you've already seen, I already showed this particular demo in a YouTube video earlier this week. The first time I've tried to create like a scripted video. So this is a business profiler tool. So this was built using Gradio. And I will be teaching you how to use Gradio in this stream. We have a lot of ground to cover in this stream, so I'm gonna move fast and so we can make sure to cover everything. And so I'm gonna go ahead and type in a company name here. So I know this is gonna be a little bit difficult to read. So I'm gonna type in YouTube. And so and I'm gonna allow this to run just because this is gonna take a minute. Now, what this is going to do is it is doing a LangChain behind the scenes that is taking the name of the company that we just gave, and then it's generating a bunch of information about that company by feeding in the inputs from one piece of the chain to the other. So specifically, you will see there is a field in here called business strategies. And what it's doing is it's deriving 5 business strategies for that ChatGPT specifically would recommend for YouTube. And then it's taking that first business strategy and actually elaborating on that to actually get results or additional like business steps that you would actually take toward enabling that strategy. So you can see, get the idea. And then at the bottom here, where there's like this like separate box, it's actually going to take a summary of the company and turn it into HTML code that you could actually just copy and paste right out. So you can start to see where, when you start to build your own applications like this, then it can be really powerful. And of course, we're using a user interface right here just to demonstrate it. And I think it's really cool user interface. But you can imagine that we might do this whole same thing just behind the scenes without having a user interface at all. All right, so here's what the results of what we did here. So company name YouTube shows the top 5 competitors: Vimeo, Dailymotion, Hulu, and Netflix and Twitch. Business strategies. It's funny that this one actually comes up all the time, and because I've tried out Apple, I've tried out other companies, expanded other markets like #1 all the time. And then you could see, so it takes the first business strategy, and then it says, all right, what are the 5 business actions you can do to support this business strategy? And that's where I list out these things like exploring potential partnerships with new companies and whatnot. And I'm not sure why it's, we had a little bit of a bug here. I don't know what's going on here, why it didn't generate the company history appropriately, and why Jar Jar is being generic. I don't know. Maybe it was, I don't know why that is. Now, it did provide the jingle, and it did take Jar Jar's summary. That's kind of hard to see, but generated as HTML code. And there's actually a button over here that it's kind of hard to see because my face is in the way. But there's a button over here that you can just copy and click, click to copy the contents of that code onto your clipboard, and then you can go paste it in IDE or wherever you want. Okay, so this is more or less what we're going to be building today. Now, we aren't going to be building this particular application. I think I mentioned that we would be in the description for this video. I apologize if you're disappointed by that. But, the only reason that we're not doing this particular use case is because there's a lot to this one, and I just don't know if we're going to be able to get to every single thing for this particular use case in the, our time here today. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to have a different use case where we take a truncated version of like what we did here, and you're still going to learn all the same concepts here. And I still have all this same code here on GitHub. You'll see that the code for the business profiler versus our new use cases that we're going to do in the stream is very, very similar. So you're not missing out on anything necessarily. It's just going to be a little bit different use case. So what that use case is going to be is actually, you may have heard that high schoolers, college students are using ChatGPT to write book reports, to write homework assignments, things like that. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to automate that. And you could argue if that's a little bit, if I'm being irresponsible with doing this. I figure, unfortunately, we live in this day and age where, I don't think the average student's going to be able to do what we're doing here anyway, the average high school student. It is what it is. Like, if a student really, really wants to do this stuff, like, they're going to do it without me, like, regardless of what we're doing here. But anyway, so I thought we'd exercise that use case. So, so that's the user interface. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start off first by just showing you what LangChain is in a Jupyter notebook, and then start applying that to Gradio, and then I'll also show you how to build a simple user interface just like this with Gradio. All right. And by the way, I am monitoring the chat on YouTube and LinkedIn for questions, so feel free to pop them down below if you have anything. So let's go ahead and jump into VS Code. I'm going to create a new Jupyter notebook. I'm just going to call this live stream tutorial. I'm just going to call it that. Does not matter what it is. All right, so IPYNB. All right, so we have that. Let's go ahead and close that out. And can we make this bigger for y'all? There we go. Making it bigger for y'all. Okay, so let's go ahead and choose a kernel. Why is it not selecting my kernel? I think it's this one. Yeah. All right. So the first thing that we need to do, of course, is we need to import the libraries that you're using. And I guess the one thing that we should have let off with, so we're going to need at least 4 different Python libraries if you have not installed these already. So let me go ahead and show you what those are. So the first one is pip install LangChain. The next one is well, I'll just tell you without typing them. So it's LangChain, LangChain, OpenAI, Wikipedia, and Gradio. Those are the 4 that we're going to need for today, and it's all just like it sounds. So I guess let me take a step back and mention what LangChain is, and why you necessarily want to use it as opposed to kind of using your own wrapper, if you will. So LangChain is one framework used for this concept known as AutoGPT. Now, I want to be very careful. There may be a product out there called AutoGPT. I don't know. When you see AutoGPT on the internet, and if you're on Twitter or on LinkedIn, the more likely it is a reference to what is it? A reference to the concept and not a product. So what the concept of AutoGPT is exactly what I was just talking about before. It's taking the outputs, or what we know as completions, from the large language model LLM, and then piping those into the next input for another task, and you just keep doing that for however long your chain is. So that's AutoGPT as a concept. So LangChain is just one framework for enabling this whole concept. Now, you might be wondering, from the previous streams, we've interacted with the OpenAI API directly. We are not going to be doing that necessarily here because we're going to be using LangChain's abstraction of this. And so you might be wondering, why don't we just, create, instead of having like LangChain as a framework, why would we not just simply create our own API wrapper that calls out to the OpenAI API? And I think the big reason for that is that you can actually swap out the LLM behind LangChain very easily. And the great benefit about that is you can imagine, when we did the OpenAI API tutorial the first time, the syntax was very, very specific. It wasn't difficult. I don't want to say difficult per se, but it took me some time to learn. So imagine you are some sort of company and you are wanting to test out your own LangChain framework, or your AutoGPT framework, and you want to try out a number of different LLMs. Well, if you were to not use something like LangChain, and if you were to just build something out yourself, which you can, now you have to incorporate the syntax for all of that, where this is abstracted away. And actually, let me show you. So this is the documentation page for the LLMs on LangChain. It supports quite a few. So if we keep scrolling down here, I saw multiple companies in here like Anthropic. Of course, we're going to be using OpenAI. But you can see that there are a ton of LLMs that are supported here, and that is one of the great benefits of using this framework as opposed to like just building something yourself. And then you might be also asking yourself, is there another better framework than this, or another alternative framework than this? And the answer is yes. I don't know them specifically off the top of my head. I can name at least Baby AGI. That's one of them. It's just that this particular one, this LangChain, has gotten the most popularity in the community over the last month or so, and that's why I'm using it. And it's pretty easy to get going with. So all right. So just to recap, so we just did the pip install of LangChain, we just did the pip install of OpenAI, Wikipedia, and Gradio. So let's go ahead and import some stuff. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna importing the necessary Python libraries. Okay, so recall, so we pretty much use OS all the time for different purposes. Recall that I have my API key for OpenAI in a YAML file on my local computer. It is not pushed up to GitHub intentionally, and so that's why I'm importing YAML here, so I can read that in appropriately. And then we're gonna import some things from LangChain. So I'm just gonna copy and paste these in for a time saver. But and I'm not gonna talk about them necessarily right now, as we will get to each one of these individual things here going forward. So I'm just copying and pasting them. Why is it telling me that this is not here? All right, let me change the kernel. Select a different kernel. And I don't know why I've got oh, I do know why. It's because I could not get like what am I blanking on? TensorFlow working, and I tried like multiple versions of Python, and apparently I never cleared them out. Okay, so that's better. All right, so that kernel did have my stuff installed on it. All right, so there we installed our Python libraries. All right, so now I need to load in my YAML file, or load up the YAML file that has my API key, and then we need to set that as an environment variable. So specifically, if you recall from our previous stream where we worked directly with the OpenAI API, we set the API key a little bit differently. This is how it is being expected to be used for LangChain. And again, I'm just copying and pasting some of the stuff that we've already covered before, just for time saving. So, we will be I will be actually typing things out by hand here in a second. All right, so then we're going to be using LangChain to connect to OpenAI. And so if you recall from above here, one of the things that we imported was from LangChain.llms import OpenAI. And so simply the way that we can, instantiate this object here that we're going to be using is saying, I'm going to call this OpenAI LLM equals OpenAI, and that's it. That's all you need to do. All right, so that's that. Now we are more or less connected to the OpenAI API using my personal API key. All right, so now the other thing that we want to do is, so as part of this book report framework, we're going to do a couple of different things here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to, we're going to pass in a historical entity, or a historical figure. I'm sorry, let me be more specific. So, imagine you're back in junior high and you're writing a book report or something. You might have to write it on Thomas Jefferson, or I don't know, Walt Disney or Steve Jobs. And so that's the first step. So the first step is we're from the user interface, we're going to take in who we want to write the book report on. Then we are actually going to use, so you can see here, LangChain actually provides some utilities, very handy little utilities for actually getting some like additional functionality that's not necessarily LLM, generative AI interactive. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get the Wikipedia summary from this wrapper here. And then about like a historical figure like Steve Jobs. I'm just going to use Steve Jobs as the example going forward. So we're going to use this to reach out to Wikipedia, get the summary about Steve Jobs, and then the first thing we want to do as part of our first chain is we want to have ChatGPT or the OpenAI API write us a summary, an outline for the paper that we want to write. So if you think back to high school, or even college, one of the things that all teachers or professors recommend is that you create an outline before you actually get started in writing the paper. So that's step one of our LangChain. So step two of our LangChain is actually taking that same Wikipedia information, taking the research paper outline, and then basically writing the paper. And so we're going to provide a little bit of prompt engineering to specifically format or provide the how we want the research paper to look like. So we'll cover that. And then the next thing, and then the final thing, just to demo, how this all works is and I don't know why I keep using this as my stupid example, is we're going to take that same research paper and translate it into the voice of Jar Jar Binks. So, and we're going to chain all those together, and you're going to see how this all works. Okay, so all right, so we've already set up our stuff here. Oh yeah, I guess the one other thing I want to do here is instantiating oh my gosh, can't type right now. Instantiating, what's the thing? An object to obtain results from the Wikipedia API. I'm going to call this Wikipedia API. Wikipedia API equals, and recall that we imported this from above, and I do want to limit how many results we're getting, because the API will give you I don't know what the default is, but more than one. So I just want one result. So I'm just going to say one result. Okay, so that covers getting things set up. Now let's actually move into the meat of what we're going to be doing here with LangChain and start building our prompts and how we are going to feed things in. So the way that we do this is, the first thing that we need to do is we need to set up what are known as prompt templates. So like I said, we are going to be taking the inputs and outputs from each of these individual steps, and then we are going to be doing a little bit of prompt engineering around them to get precise results from each of these individual steps as they go out to the ChatGPT API. Okay, so we need to set up a number of different prompt templates for each of our individual steps. So recall that the first step that we want to do is creating a research, what do you call it? I'm sorry, I keep messing that up. Outline. We want to create an outline for the research paper that we're going to write. So I'm going to say creating a prompt template for generating a research paper outline. Hold on, can't see my stuff here. I can't read my comments here. Sorry. I got it loaded down here on the other screen just to help me type it really fast, because we're already 15 minutes in, and this is gonna go long. I feel like it's gonna go long today. All right, so we're for generating a research paper outline, and I can't remember. So I guess this is the one thing that I'm kind of breezing past here, but you might be wondering, as we set up these prompt templates, like, how did I know how to necessarily engineer what the prompt for what I wanted to output? And the simple answer is just basically using zero-shot prompting and the ChatGPT interface itself. Is basically just asking ChatGPT right here with no context, no prompting, trying to ask a question a number of different ways until I get something that looks like it's nice, and then I use that. Okay, so give me just a second, because I need to refresh my screen down here because I can't read what I wrote. For some reason, it's not letting me scroll over. All right, because I already did this before. All right. Okay, so all right, so we need to all right, let me read my notes here. Okay. All right, so we're going to take the research paper outline. So what we want the outline to do is we want to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So the introductions and the conclusion are pretty self-explanatory, but as far as the body of the post goes, is we want to grab the 3 most important events of that person's life and have the body of the research paper be that. All right, so we're going to call this research paper outline template. Okay, and then one of the things that we imported at the top of this post here is this from LangChain.prompts import prompt template. So we're going to be using this one for our 3 different prompt steps here. So we're going to call this prompt template. All right, and then we need to pass in input variables. So this is what we are going to be taking in and then actually supplying as part of the prompt that we're going to be typing out here. So I'm going to call this entity or company or person name. All right, so person name, and then I'm going to call this template. So that's the input variable we're going to be taking in, and this template is actually the prompt template that we're going to be providing. And then you might be wondering, well, how do I inject this person name into the template here? And you'll see that in just a second. So actually, and I do need to take in also the Wikipedia entry. And so this actually, so there may be a way to actually chain together the Wikipedia entry, but with the whole LangChain kind of thing. I don't know how to do that. Like, I didn't have enough time to research that. So we're just going to grab this prior to, like, we're still going to use this up here, but this will not be necessarily part of the chain itself. There may be a way to do that again. I'm just not sure off the top of my head. So we're just going to go with what I know for now. All right. So, all right. What happened there? All right. So the template that we want here, the following is a Wikipedia entry about. All right. So here's where we actually inject our, I don't know why that did the F string formatting. Oh, that's odd. Interesting. Interesting. All right. So we want to provide the following was a Wikipedia entry about person name. All right. So person name. And then I'm going to ask, please provide me for me an outline of a basic research paper. All right, what did I write here? With an introduction. The 3 most important events of this person's, I gotta do the escape character, person's life, and a conclusion. All right, here is the Wikipedia information. Here is the Wikipedia information. All right, and then I'm going to pop in the Wikipedia information. I'm going to put a couple new line characters there just because new line characters just representing like a new line if you were to look at it in a user interface like format. All right, so Wikipedia entry. All right, so that's our prompt. So this is the programmatic prompt that, you know, step 1, everything is going to get fed through here. So we're going to query the Wikipedia entry about, you know, again, we're using Steve Jobs here. So what this is going to do programmatically is saying the following is a Wikipedia about Steve Jobs. Please provide for me an outline of a basic research paper with an introduction and blah, 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 blah. All right, so that's step 1. So, all right, so that is, and notice that we are not defining the output variable here. We will do that in another piece here. I don't know why necessarily, like, it's not defined here, but it is what it is. So if you're wondering where that is at, like where we define the output variables for each of these stages, do not worry, we will get to that. All right, so now we're going to do creating a prompt template for generating the research paper itself. All right. Okay, so what we want to do here is, so research paper template equals prompt template. So again, we're doing very much the same thing that we did above. So we're going to pass in input variables equals, all right, so we want to pass in person name, and we want to pass in the research paper outline. So we're going to pass in the outline that we defined above. Now, again, like I said, where do we define this? We have not defined this yet because we define this as an output variable somewhere else. Just know that this is coming from here above. All right, so that's the input variables. I just realized I forgot the S there. That would not have been good. And all right, so input variables template equals, all right, so this is where I'm going to actually give the prompt for how we actually want this paper to be written. So you are a high schooler who has just been assigned who has just been asked to write a research report about a historical person. The historical person is person name, so that's and the following is an outline to follow for structuring the paper. All right, and then what do I got to do here? All right, research paper outline, not template, just the outline, and then finally, please write this research paper in roughly 2 pages. We're going to say 2 pages. 2 pages. Write this research paper with to be 2 pages long. Okay. Probably could have written that better. I was just kind of riffing off the top of my head there. All right, so again, so we are taking the input from up here. So this is going to provide us the outline. Outline's being popped into here, and you can see that we are using it as part of this prompt. And then, so that's step 2. And then finally, step 3 is the jar jar template. So that is creating a prompt template for rewriting the research paper as jar Binks. Okay, so I'm going to call this jar jar template. You can see why I didn't do the business profiler now, because there was actually like 10 of these. And this one, we've only got 3. That's why we're simplifying things for today. So apologies again if you want to build that. The code's all out on GitHub, though. All right, and we're learning a lot today, because you're also going to learn Gradio, for better or worse. Gradio is pretty similar to Streamlit, if you have all used Streamlit before. All right, so what input variables am I passing into this last one? I think it's just the research paper itself. All right, research paper. All right, and then template equals you are Jar Binks from Star Wars. Please rewrite the following research paper into Jar's voice. Oops. Escape character. I'm sorry, not yeah. Yeah, escape character. All right, there we go. Into Jar voice, and then I'm gonna put in some new lines. Oops, you can't see because my face is in the way. Sorry about that. Let me move my face. All right, there we go. And research paper. Okay. All right, so that is the long. I don't know why it keeps doing this f-string formatting business. I mean, I know why it is, but like I don't want it to do that. All right, so just be careful with that if you're following along. Okay, so that is setting up the prompt templates. This is by far the longest part that takes to type out, just because we are having to do our little bit of prompt engineering. So again, with the prompt engineering, we're asking for a very specific format, and we are providing all the information appropriately. Okay, so that is the templates. Now, so you might be wondering, how do we actually start building the links of the chain, if you will, and then also getting the output keys for each of these things. So the way that we do that is we're going to take basically all these same 3 templates, set up our chains, and then we're going to actually chain them all together in one long sequential chain that you can run pretty seamlessly. All right, so the way that we do that, all right, did that run fine? That ran fine. Okay, so we're going to be creating 3 chains. So we're the research paper outline, the research paper, and the Jar Jar, whatever. I'm blanking on the name. The Jar Jar version of the paper. All right, so research. I'm going to call this research paper outline chain. All right, so again, if you recall from the top here, we imported this thing called LangChain. So LangChain is actually the individual links that we're going to be using of the chain. And then you'll see here in a little bit how we're actually going to be using the sequential chain to actually chain everything together into one nice little package there. All right, so the research paper chain, I'm going to call this LangChain, and then we need to pass in a couple parameters. So the LLM that we want to pass in is the OpenAI LLM. So recall that we instantiated this toward the top of the post, or the top of the notebook, I'm sorry. And then the prompt that we want to pass in is our prompt template. So this is going to be our research paper outline template. And then I'm going to set I'm not going to set verbose to equal true. Yes, I will. Verbose equals true. You don't have to do this one. So this is just whenever we actually run the program, you can actually see it running in action. And finally, this is where we set the output key. So the output key for this particular chain, we are going to call research paper outline. Research paper outline. Yes, that's correct. All right. Outliner. And then basically we have to do the same thing for the next 2. So research paper chain equals LangChain. I'm just checking the comments for questions while I'm typing this stuff out. LM equals OpenAI LLM. Prompt equals research paper template. And I'm blanking. What am I? Oh, verbose. That's next. Equals true. And I don't know why it does this. I wish it wouldn't do that. All right, output key equals research paper. Oops, paper. And then finally, we got our jar jar chain. Jar jar chain equals LLM chain. LLM equals OpenAI LLM. Prompt equals jar jar template. Verbose equals true. And output key equals jar paper. All right. Okay, so there we've defined our 3 chains. So these are all individual chains, and now we can start to order them together in the format that we want with the sequential chain. So this is actually pretty easy. So what we need to do here is we are going to instantiate our LangChain, our sequential chain, I'm sorry, and then we're actually going to pop in everything. We're going to define the initial input variables that we're going to be passing in and the output variables that we are going to be returning as part of our user interface. So the way that we do that, again, very easy. I'm going to call this research paper LangChain. So this is going to represent the entire thing. All right, so we're going to call sequential chain. All right, and then this is where we define our chains. So chains, and it's basically just a Python list of the 3 chains that we just defined above in the previous cell. So research paper outline chain, and then the research paper chain, and then the jar jar chain. So that we are taking, and I guess we could have called these links or something else. It doesn't really matter too much, but you can see it's very easy to actually start stringing these things together. So that's the chains themselves. Now let's go ahead and define, why is that given? Oh, whoops, forgot to close the bracket there. Apologies. All right. All right, now what is next up? The input variables. Input, oh my gosh, can I type today? Nope. Input variables equals, so we're going to pass in the what do we call that? The person name and the Wikipedia entry. Okay. All right, and then finally output variables. Oh my gosh, I cannot type today. Output variables equals. All right, so this is where these are the things that we want to surface as part of the user interface. And so the way that this actually is going to be returned as the response from the LangChain object is basically like a dictionary of value. So, based off these keys here that we're going to be supplying, we'll get the values, which represent the things that open it really for each of the steps along the way. All right, research paper, and then finally, jar paper. All right, so that is it. That's really, we have instantiated our LangChain here. So now we are actually ready to move into actually using this for our purposes here. And so that's, and you can see the power of then using something like LangChain here is, even like I said, we could do this all separately without LangChain, sure. But the nice thing about this is we can then swap out our LLM. Like you can imagine, I said it pretty statically here. I could even have set a variable though, where you did like a for loop, or you tested out, 4 or 5 of different LLMs, and that's all abstracted away for you. You don't have to worry about trying to figure out all that stuff yourself. So that's one of the really nice things about LangChain. And again, it's getting a lot of great support from the developer community. So we'll see. I don't, I can't guarantee that this is going to be the Auto GPT framework going forward, but right now it sort of seems to be. So that's what we wanted to cover it. All right. So how do we actually get results from the LangChain? So the first thing that we want to do is let's just go ahead and call a person name. We're going to call this Steve Jobs. All right. Boom. Steve Jobs. First thing that we need to do is we need to get the Wikipedia entry. So retrieving the Wikipedia entry about the historical figure from the Wikipedia API. All right, so the way that we do this, I'm going to call this Wikipedia entry, and it's very easy to do this. So we just do Wikipedia API .run, and then I'm going to do a little bit of f-string formatting here because I'm only expecting that the individual is submitting the person name. But if you have searched on Wikipedia, you actually get better results if you want to look for a person, if you put in parentheses that person afterwards. So that's why I'm doing a little bit of f-string formatting here. I'm going to go ahead and run that, and then let's just go ahead and look at that. We can see the Wikipedia entry about Steve Jobs right here as a string-based value. Okay, so we have our person name, we have our Wikipedia entry. Now let's go ahead and use our LangChain to actually get some results here. So I'm going to call this LangChain response. LangChain response equals research paper LangChain, and then we need to pass in a dictionary that represents our input keys. So recall that we set the first input key to be person name, so it's actually a key value pair. So that's the key. The value is going to be the person name, so this is going to be Steve Jobs. And then the Wikipedia entry, I spelled that wrong, Wikipedia entry, key value pair again. And then the value of this is going to be the Wikipedia entry. All right. Now, this is going to take probably a minute to run. So you can see here that, we have already, so by setting verbose to equal true, you can start to see a little bit of the output here. And you can see that it is going through each of the steps here. Now, this is a little bit difficult to read. As you can see, the output is intentionally being truncated by Jupyter here. But we'll be able to see all this once this finishes completing. All right, so we already see, we can see at least the end of the thing here. The end of the research paper here is it was giving the conclusion. Now, the one thing I will note, whenever I was testing this out right before this live stream started an hour ago, I had this weird issue where the results from one LangChain step were bleeding over into the other one. So like the actual research paper itself, for example, like got cut off like 3/4 of the way in and then started to bleed over into Jar Jar's paper. And so I don't know if it's definitely a LangChain thing. Like, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe, I don't know if I did something stupid or something. Like, I'm not an expert on LangChain by any means. So yeah, I don't know what happened there. All right, so that completed after 45 seconds. All right, let's go ahead and look at the response. So the response, like I said, is going to be a dictionary of values, and it's going to give us the input, our input values here. So this is what we provided as the input. And then you can see here all the things that we wanted to, and here we go. This is exactly what I was talking about. I have no idea why this happened. You can see that with the Jar Jar paper, it is bleeding over once again in this variable, and I have no idea why this is the case. This seems like a bug for sure, because then if we continue to scroll on over, we'll eventually get to where it's like the legit Steve Jobs, or the legit Jar Jar jargon. Jar Jar jargon, and it looks like you end it. I don't know. Maybe I have something incorrect. Maybe like I have to set some additional parameters on my LLM. So just note that something's going on buggy here. But at least I'm still getting you, I don't know, 95% of the way there. So apologies that I'm not getting you 100% of the way there. But yeah, so this is LangChain. I don't really have anything more to share about LangChain itself. There are other cool things that you can do with LangChain. I just want to give this entry. But now let's go ahead and start converting this over into Gradio. And before we actually start copying and pasting all this stuff over, let's go ahead and give an introduction to Gradio and how that works. So I'm going to create a new file in my source directory. This is going to be an actual Python file. I'm going to call this live stream book report generator.py. Okay, and so the way that Gradio works, so I'm gonna let me collapse this to make this bigger. So import Gradio. Let me make that bigger for y'all. Import Gradio as gr, so that is a typical aliasing for Gradio there. Now the way that Gradio works is basically it's a series of Python commands that you can run, and basically the way that you set the the way that you structure the how the ordering of the individual elements is how it appears in the UI. It's actually really, really easy to get going with this. So let's go ahead, and I am going to I'm gonna type something out really quick, and then I'm gonna go ahead and fire it up in the browser, and I'm gonna fire it up in debug mode. That way it's constantly refreshing, and I'm gonna have it running off to the right of the screen here. And in fact, I might have to move my face down again. All right, so move my face down. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So the way that we do this, now there's for context, there's actually two ways to interact with Gradio. There is like a high level interface versus a low level interface, and the low level interface is provides more customization and stuff. And so we're actually going to be working with a low level interface. Just be aware that if you actually used, ironically, if you use ChatGPT to ask questions about the low level interface of Gradio, you're going to get responses back probably about the high level interface, which was very frustrating for me when I was learning this. Okay, so the way that we do this, all right, so I'm going to call this Gradio layout and Gradio UI layout and functionality, because we're also going to define how the behavior of the UI should look. It's very easy. You're actually going to see, you'd be surprised at how easy it is to get up and going with this. So, all right, let me copy and paste this silly little bit here. All right, so the way that we do this is with Gradio.blocks. So blocks are the UI elements that we're going to build. So, and there's a ton of them. You can have sliders, you can have text boxes, you can have markdown cells. We're going to keep things pretty simple. You can have images. We're going to keep things pretty simple. So I'm going to call this in here, I'm going to call this book report generator. And then I'm going to set the theme to be base because I think it looks nice. You don't have to set the theme. And then I'm going to put it as book report generator. All right, and then I'm just going to type the word in pass here for a second. Now, in order to actually launch this from the Python script, you have to have the if name then main kind of deal. So that's what I'm going to do here for script invocation. So script invocation, just checking the chat to see if there's any questions. All right, so script invocation, if name equals main. All right, like so. Then we need to launching the Gradio application. All right, and so the way that we do that, again, we call this book report generator dot launch, like so. All right. Now I just want to add one user interface element here, and then we'll keep going. So I'm just going to add a markdown title. Again, we're keeping things pretty simple for this one. So I'm going to call this setting the UI elements for the book report generator. Okay, so I'm going to call this title markdown equals gr.markdown. So again, very simple. And I'm just going to call this, and we can use some simple markdown here, book report generator. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and open up my terminal here. So there's actually two ways to launch Gradio. The first way is just using the standard Python commands here, and that will open or basically start up Gradio in more of a production kind of scenario. But let's say you are like we're going to be doing here, you want to make changes on the fly, and you want to see how they refresh in almost real time as like a debugging mode. The way that you do that actually is running this command Gradio, and then you need to pass in your Python file and then the name of whatever you define this thing to be. So what do I call this? Live stream book report generator.py, and then I need to pass in book report generator. Okay. And now this is starting it in a reload mode. So I'm going to open this up, and then we're going to do a split screen here to have these things side by side. All right. And then we can go ahead and have that go away. So you can see here that we already have our first markdown thing. So if I change this to, here, let me make this smaller, I guess, because now I can't see. All right, so we have book report generator. And let's say I just added an exclamation point. So if we wait 2 seconds here, we should see on the right a book. Yep, there's the exclamation point. All right, so that is the very, 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 very basic way to instantiate Gradio. And now you can see how we can start to put different things in to actually get our results back and stuff. So I'm going to add a few text boxes. So the text boxes for Gradio are either interactive or not interactive. So we want only one interactive one because we want the one interactive one to actually take in the person that you want to profile. And then the other three are not going to be interactive, and those are just going to surface the results of what we want to see. All right, so we're gonna have 4 different fields. So recall again from our notebook that we had 3 return values. We had the research paper outline, the research paper, and the Jar Jar paper. So the 4th element is just going to be the person name that we take in. So all right, so the way that we do that, I'm gonna call this person name prompt dot equals gr.textbox All right, and then we can actually, all right, so let me stop here for a second, let it refresh, see what it does. Did not do anything. Did it not? Really? All right, so I'm going to add, might help if I was typing this in the right place. Duh. All right, that's why. All right, so now you can see nothing. All right, so you can see a blank text box here. Now we can actually put placeholder information in here, or we can actually change the label of this text box. So the way that we change the label of the text box, so we're going to put label equals please enter name here. I'm going to call it that, and then for placeholder, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm going to put historical name to research, or person to research. And then in the placeholder text, I'm going to put placeholder equals please enter the name of the person here, then press enter on your keyboard. All right, let's wait for here for a second. All right, there we go. So now we have some placeholder text there. All right, and by the way, so I'm in dark mode right now. If I were to change my Mac to just light mode over here, oops, wrong one, display, then you'll actually see that this user interface can actually go bright too. So let me change that back to dark. All right, so that's a nice little responsiveness there. All right, so that is text box number 1. That's our only interactive one, and then we need to create a couple more that are actually going to be like the placeholders for our other things. And actually, I'm going to be lazy. I'm just going to copy and paste these because I want to. We're already 45 minutes deep, and I don't want to keep you all too long here today. All right, so I went ahead and added these 3. Now note there, as part of these, I put the interactive parameter to equal false. And so if you see over here, I can click over here and type if I wanted to, but if I click these other text boxes, you will see that I cannot click them. All right, that is our basic user interface. Now, I guess I do want to add a clear button. So like whenever after we do something, if we wanted to clear the results, let's go ahead and add that as well. All right, and so the way that we did that, creating a clear button to clear the results. Actually, I'm going to remove that comment. Yeah, there we go. And now we have a clear results button here. Now let's go ahead. So that is the user interface itself. Now we can go ahead and start adding in all the functionality to basically the exact same functionality that we took from the Jupyter Notebook. We are going to pass in here. So instead, I'm going to try to make this as simple on myself as possible. Let's see what we got to do. I'm just going to start doing a lot of copying and pasting, to be frank. So, so I'm going to copy and paste this over here. So now we're importing all the same things that we imported from above. Wait, what the heck did I copy there? Oh, yeah, I see what I did there. All right. So I copied all that. Now recall that we need to do the OpenAI connection. And so I am doing that by loading up my API key from my local file as such. Again, nothing new. We're basically just taking the same contents that we got from our Jupyter Notebook and are starting to copy and paste them in here. All right, so I'm going to create another section in here. I'm going to call this the LangChain configuration, LangChain configuration. All right, now let me go ahead and start moving some of these prompt templates over. All right, so scrolling on up, grab all these, copy and paste. All right, copy and paste. All right, so there's all of our prompt templates. Now recall that we also need to then get all the chains. All right, and then, all right, I don't have a comment on this one. Why do I not? All right, so I'm going to call this instantiating LangChains for everything above. All right, so we have our templates. Let's go ahead and make this bigger for now. I'll resize it here in a minute. Actually, that looks all right now that I look at it. Okay, so all right, so we are setting up the LangChains for all the objects. Now, what do we need to grab? We need to grab actually creating the LangChain. All right, so the way that we do that, again, here is doing this. All right, so what is my comments on this one? Creating the LangChain. Boom. And then finally, one other thing is that I do need to instantiate, I'm going to toss it here at the bottom of this little section, is instantiating the Wikipedia API wrapper. So again, we just did a lot of copy and pasting there, so let me review this really quick. What we're basically doing is we are copying and pasting all the stuff out of our Jupyter Notebook for LangChain, the 3 different steps that we're going to be doing, and you will see how we will start connecting these all appropriately to this dealio here. So the way that this works in Gradio is it actually, all right, let me go ahead and just show you the syntax. So let's go ahead and create, like, so in this same blocks thing, this is where we actually define the behavior for what we want, how we want our application to behave. So I'm going to say defining the behavior for what happens when the user hits enter after submitting a name. All right, so the way that we do that is, so we have our person name prompt, and so this, which is the same object that I am like showing you up here. And so it actually has a function on it called submit. So this is basically saying, okay, when the user hits enter, then we want you to execute these things. So we need to create a function. It's going to be called generate book report. And we need to define this function separately. We have not done so already. And so this is the basic. So basically when this thing gets initiated, we are going to call this function, and then we need to pass in inputs, and we need to retrieve some outputs. And the inputs and outputs here are actually going to be the user interface elements of Gradio, just not to confuse them with the the standard inputs and outputs that we were working with in the notebook already. All right. Okay. So inputs equals person name prompt, and then the outputs are, because we are going to be refreshing every single one of these fields again, I'm just going to copy and paste this. So recall, here, I was calling it entity. I don't know why I changed the name to person. All right, so you can see here, so when the user hits submit, then it will call this function that we have not created yet, and then it will basically do all the things that we need it to do. And then before we move forward with that function, I just want to show you like how really quick we can do, like, clear these elements out after we're done. So I'm just going to copy and paste this again because it's not super important. But basically what we do is, same idea, is we have our own custom function, and then we're just going to return back empty strings for everything, and that clears out the result. So I'm actually just going to copy and paste the same function over. So all right, so I need to, let me call this, let me create another section in here. All right, I'm going to call this helper functions. Helper, or no, I'm going to call them these Gradio behavior functions, because that's what they are. All right, so the second one that I'm just going to copy and paste in, because I don't feel like copying this, and this is just to clear the results. All right, boom, clear the results. All right, so, and now this is where we actually have to create the entry that's going to, or the function that's going to generate our book report. So we're going to call this generate book report. Recall that again that we need to take in one parameter, and that is going to be our person named prompt. And the reason I'm calling it person name prompt and not person name is because, just recall, I want to differentiate that this is, the person name prompt is the actual UI element of Gradio, whereas the person named itself is the actual, the string value. And so, yes, they are two different things. Here, just checking for questions, no questions. And then I'm just going to copy and paste my doc string here just to show you what we're going to be doing here. All right, so provided person. All right, again, I was calling this entity at first, and now I've changed mine to person. Person. All right, person. Cleared out the, all right, the name of the person who we will be generating a book report for. Okay, so this is a doc string, and so you could see here what it's going to be doing is we take in this object here. Actually, I'm going to call this, well, never mind. I'm just going to keep it like that. All right, so what we're going to be doing is taking this in, and then we are going to be returning these different things. So we're going to get the outline of the research paper itself, and so on. All right, so the very first thing that we need to do is we need to actually set the entity name to be a separate thing than the entity name prompt. Now, what's going to be a little bit confusing to you, actually, we don't even need to do it like this, now that I think about it. Well, I guess I will. So I'm going to setting the name of the person being profiled. I'm going to call this person name equals, it's going to bug me if I don't fix that. All right, person name equals, we are going to call this person name prompt. All right, And then we are going to, and this is where we start, just copying more of what we already did before. So we are going to get the historical entry from Wikipedia, like so. And then we are actually going to run our LangChain. So the way that we do that here is LangChain response, research paper LangChain. And then, all right, so getting all the appropriate responses for each step in the LangChain. Okay, and then recall again that this is going to have a response that's basically a dictionary value containing all these different entries. And so the way that we can set those to actually appear in the UI is basically taking these same elements and assigning them out appropriately. So again, I'm just being a little bit lazy. So we have my LangChain response, and then we are assigning these back to these values. Here, let me make some additional spacing, and those will get resurfaced in this context here. So that will get that is how it'll all tie together. So then we simply return it. I apologize. We do need to clear out the person name prompt. So clearing out the person name prompt. So person name prompt is now empty. So now let's return all these things. So person name prompt, research paper outline, research paper, and jar jar paper. Okay, now let me just check really quick here. This should be it. This should be all that we need. I just want to make sure really quick that I didn't miss anything. All right, so let's go ahead and try this out. Historical person to research. Let's try, I don't know, Abraham Lincoln. How about Abraham Lincoln? All right, this is going to take a little bit, recall, so I just hit enter. The only thing that I don't like about Gradio, maybe there is a way around this, is I don't like that it always goes into like this like little loading UI kind of thing. So this will probably take here a second, and then we will. I can't believe we actually got this under an hour. Like I flew through the material, I guess. But you can see again how fast it is to work with LangChain, work with the OpenAI API, or any of these other things, turning it into user interface. We just did that all in an hour. And that was with me explaining everything. I probably could have written this all in 20 minutes. Okay, so here you go. So here, let me go ahead and move this to where you can kind of see a little bit better. So up here we have our book report outline. So the outline, the introduction, and this is not formatting well. You could probably reformat it a little bit better. So the introduction is going to have a definition of Abraham Lincoln, summary of his life, important events, becoming a lawyer, election of 1860, Emancipation Proclamation, of course, and then summary of achievements and the legacy. So you can see that we have all this part. Now, we're having the same business go on here. Again, I don't know why it's doing this, where like part of this is spilling over into the next thing. So you can see here his legacy, and then you can see for some reason it spills over in a Jar Jar's thing. And then we have, of course, here, let me move my face so you can all bask in the gloriousness of Jar Jar's explanation. This always makes me laugh. Like, I never fail to laugh at this silly Jar Jar output. Okay, so that's it. So you can see that, and if we click the clear results button, everything is cleared out. And that is all. All right, we covered a lot of ground today. As I wrap up, do we have any questions or anything? Otherwise, I'm going to call it here shortly. It's really been interesting to see how really powerful all these things can be when you start to put them together. So like part of the reason, so just for a little context, why did I have a entity? Why was I calling it entity name and not person name? I just didn't have the time to implement this, but what I was thinking is, so, as a data quality kind of thing, like you want to make sure that that's a person that you're putting into this first little box up here. And so I was thinking, the reason I was calling it entity name is you could put anything in there. And then I actually did have a prompt that was saying, okay, is this entity a person? And if so, would you consider this a historical figure? Please give me the response back as yes or no, just yes or no. And then what the idea here was, and I just ran out of time to implement this functionality, was based off of that answer. So it would just return a yes or no. So if it is a historical figure, then we proceed on as expected. If not, And then I was actually going to have Gradio surface an error message that said, this is not a historical figure. Please submit somebody else. And that's why I changed it to person name, because I got a little, I wanted to keep the time short here, and not necessarily, worry about what I just described there. So, but you can imagine it's actually pretty easy to enable that. Let me just show the Gradio documentation really quick, just to show you how easy it is to work with. All right. I'm going to move this back into being its own screen. Okay, so off here on the left are all the different things that you can, build as far as UI elements. And you can see it's actually really easy to implement a lot of this stuff. So, let me just select image, for example. And the really cool thing about Hugging Face here is that they have also not only provided the documentation, but you can actually try out examples from within the browser here on code to actually enable some of these things. So you can see here that, this is what you would actually build this thing here if we were running Gradio appropriately. So you can see that it's actually asking me to upload a file, which I'm not going to. And then you can even look at the specific code here to actually enable this. Now, this is what I was talking about, the gr.interface. That's the high-level interface. I prefer the low-level one, so you can do the same thing. It's just the same gr.image. It's just that if you wanted to use that in here, you just put that under this gr.blocks. I prefer this, and you can actually do, so let me just show you the code real quick for the profiler. Like if you wanted to do multiple columns and stuff, and you wanted to have them scale appropriately, so you can see this is how you do it. You actually have to set your row, and then as part of your row, then you can set your columns, and then you set the scale of the columns. So you can see that I have this basically being a 1:3 scale. So like basically the stuff on the left side of the screen, that's just the basic prompting stuff, whereas all the results that you saw were being done out of this other column over here. So a lot of really cool things you can do with Gradio. I'm pretty excited about it. Not even in the LLM context. Like I think I'm going to use Gradio for other fun little projects that we'll do going forward. So wow, I talked a lot in that hour. I don't see any additional questions, so we are going to call it here. This is not the end of my generative AI kind of work. So I'm very interested. I've been talking with, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I should not. I got to be careful with what I do. I can't say. Basically, there are some additional things that I want to do and then, share out as a live stream. When I will get around to those, I don't know. Partially just because this concept that I'm thinking, and I'll just tell you right now, I want to figure out how to do document embedding. And the idea with document embedding is that is the recommended way to actually enhance the results of your ChatGPT. So you can imagine, ChatGPT. So specifically, what OpenAI did is, ChatGPT was trained on data up to 2021, and so what they were showing is, let's say you had you wanted to use the ChatGPT to query information about something that went on in 2022. So what they did is they got a number of Wikipedia entries about the 2022 Olympics, and then passed them through the embeddings API. And then when you actually ask questions about that information from I think it was something like 30 different Wikipedia pages that they pulled from, then they use that embedding to actually get enhanced results. And so I want to do a project like that. I think that would be really cool. I just don't know how long it will take me to enable. And to be very frank, 1 week from today, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And and I've been saying this for weeks. Zelda here, Zelda here, Zelda here. Zelda right underneath my camera here. You're not going to see me next week. I'm going to be busy. But I really want to get this done. So maybe we'll do it like a Thursday night stream or something. I don't know. And anyway, I'm going to call it here. I hope you all have a great weekend. I hope you all enjoyed this stream. I enjoyed doing it. I think it's a really cool concept. And yeah, we'll call it there. Hope you all have a good weekend. Thank you.